Hello there and welcome to Travels with Geordie. If this is your first visit, my name is Peter Knowles and I live on this classic wooden motor cruiser here in Victoria, British Columbia, along with the loving memory of my pup Geordie, all the while fixing it up for some pretty impressive cruising someday. If that's the sort of thing you might find interesting, please consider sticking around and subscribing. I'd love to have you. So then what are we up to this week, especially getting ready for the big sea trial tomorrow? Okay, mostly electrical work. Yes, I do have to make sure that in this lull, while I'm getting myself in shape to do the haul out, I carry on with everything I need to get my survey done. And the main thing for that is electrical. So it's AC electrical, carrying on. And today, finally hauling wires. This is the AC cable, and I'm going to run it all through the boat and start to figure out where I'm going to be able to put outlet boxes, many of which won't be able to be installed permanently because they go into cabinetry that isn't there yet, but time to run the wire. So here are the AC circuits, only 8 for now, with room for 2 more. I actually think 8 is going to be fine, but it's nice to have a little extra room. I do have a dedicated circuit back here for a future laundry, cockpit circuit, and I think I'm in pretty good shape, and one for hot water, of course. So they're going to come in here as you've been following along, but again, I have room on the bus for 10. So these wires are going to all go through and out through the hole with the exception of one that goes forward. Let's just get on with it. Okay, so I like to run all the long runs first. This gives you more options for the remaining wires. So this is a dedicated circuit that is just for the cockpit. So it is by far the longest single run. Let's pull it through. So to get started, I'm running the wires through a series of little clips. And they may not be the final clips, but they'll be pretty close to the final location. It just allows it really easy to just pull them through, and then I can put tighter clamps on, clips, clamps. And because it's flat cable, I'm trying to keep it relatively flat because when they're all stacked, I'd like them to be all nice and neat. All right, so we finally enter the tunnel here. Some of you will remember putting those conduits through behind the head. Keep this nice and flat. And here we go. Carrying on. And up to about there somewhere. And that is the cockpit. Next. And that's laundry. I'm sure this is completely obvious to most people, but when you take wire off a spool, make sure that you roll it off and not spiral it off. You'll set yourself up with a pile of grief. Normally I would set up a little rack with a wire to hold this, but oh, I'm just trying to get this done. Handy to keep any of your spares marked off, so it's pretty easy to tell rather than trying to figure out where you're going with all these. Anyway, so here we go. 7 circuits aft and 1 forward, and just about there. And yes, as I said, 7 circuits aft and 1 forward. Next thing is just to connect them all up to these bus bars, but that might be tomorrow. I am pretty beat up. Alright, so it's time to put all the terminals on the end of all these wires and hook them up to the buses in the box. And although the actual work is pretty straightforward, getting it really neat, which is what I want to do, is a little stressful. Okay, this is going relatively well. The trick I have to make sure is that the green wire, the ground wire, is furthest out so that these line up nicely, because if you remember my system here, I drop the ground wire right away, the neutral goes underneath and gets dropped, and the hot wire goes underneath them both and ends up here. Of course, the hot wire has to be on independent bus bars rather than terminal strips rather than a bus bar because they all go to the various circuits, whereas these are common. So anyway, just a matter of making sure I have the wire in the right orientation, and then it's just cutting, measuring, stripping, yeah. Gosh, there we go. 8 circuits, which I don't know if that sounds like a lot or a little to the rest of you. It seems like a lot to me for someone who's been living off, well, 2 for the last several years. So I'm really thrilled about this. It's going to be 14 outlets. Wow. And I have room on the panel for 2 more circuits. Gosh forbid there's something else I need to do. Let me just tidy this up with some P-clips, and I'm really pleased. Well, good morning, folks. This is a big day. Time to actually install some duplex outlets, which will finally wean me off the ever-present living off extension cords lifestyle I've had for the last couple of years. It's going to be so nice to have plugs. Anyway, so we're only going to do a few circuits, and the connections to the panel will still be temporary. That really should be the name of the show, isn't it? Anyway, let's get some of these in and get rid of some extension cords. Okay, so the first circuit would be right there, so that I could plug in computer and other stuff here at my nav station. But because this is temporary, I'm going to settle on simply mounting it back here somewhere where all this stuff gets to get plugged in. So I don't have it's extension cords. It's all about extension cords. All right, then, there's a lot I want to talk about here, but first off, I'm going to use standard residential duplex receptacles, cover plates, and boxes. Now, there are specialized marine and high-quality medical-grade, etc. duplex for these. They're outrageously expensive, and I'm not sure that there's really that much reason to justify them. What I will suggest, however, is use white, and use the ones that have these dimples. Some of the newer style, I think they call them Decora, the whole duplex face is flat. And let me tell you, in the dark, when you're trying to get a plug to go in there, it drives you crazy. So stick with white, stick with the ones with the dimples, tried and true. Okay, there's more. Now, these screw terminals, if I can find the right screwdriver, are actually they're peened over on the inside. So if you're familiar with these, you'll know that you can't pull these screws out. They come as far as they can, and they're designed so that you put your wire around it and then screw them back in. Well, they can be removed, which you'd have to do if you were going to use a ring terminal like this to get it over the screw. However, it's my belief that by forcing these back out, putting it through a ring terminal and then forcing it back in, you've damaged the threads enough on these relatively cheap little plates that you're not getting as good a connection as you could if you didn't, as if you used a forked spade like this, which basically slips over the screw, and you don't have to remove the screw to do it. But don't use one of these, because this is a cheap standard forked spade, whereas this is a hooked forked spade. I hope you can see what I'm showing you there. Well, basically these little hooks here guarantee that once you have that under the head of the screw and tight, you have a really good mechanical lock there, and they're not going to slip out. Plus, it's ABYC regulation for using these kinds of terminals at all. Okay, there's more. There are 2 basic styles of genuine Ancor crimpers. and they're both fantastic, and they both do exactly what they say they'll do, sort of. This is the style that is used for the shrink tube style connector. In other words, there's shrink tube insulation on this in advance, and in fact it even has glue inside. These are really nice connectors, and it's what I encourage you to use. Not cheap, by the way. Anyway, so to crimp these, you put the wire in and you crush them between the mandrels of the appropriate color-coded section on here, and it does a fine job. The other type is designed for the non-shrink tube. This one's already been crushed, so please forgive me for showing it to you. With the nylon style insulator on it, and what this does, it has two sets of mandrels, one to crush the actual barrel of the connector around the wire, and one to crush the nylon insulator. Now this is not a high quality one, so it didn't crush nicely, and that's what those are for. Now this is where I break the rules a bit. I find that this style of mandrel, if you look at it, it actually is a captive mandrel. There's a little gap, and then it presses down into that gap, meaning it gets pressed basically on all four sides. It does an exceptionally good job of crimping these conductors. This, however, only squeezes it together on two sides, and to me, does a substandard or less high quality crimp. Now the problem is the back side of this has another set of mandrels designed to crimp the nylon part of the nylon connector. So what happens is when you use these on these shrink tube connectors, this mandrel will somewhat deform the plastic shrink tube material. Once in a while, it will actually damage it to the point where you have to redo the crimp. Very rarely, 99% of the time, by the time you shrink tube it, you'll have in other words, heat it, you'll have a perfect connection, and I believe a far better connection crimped in the actual barrel of the connector. Okay, so this particular connection we're about to make is actually going to be from my laundry. Someday I'm going to splurge on one of those combination washer dryer machines, but for now it's just a good circuit to use back here in the back of the boat for general use. So these boxes employ a plastic spring cable clamp, so I'm just going to push that through. Okay, and I'm going to push enough wire through that I can do this work easily, because I can release this to pull that back. Okay, so this is an end run, so there's only going to be one connection made in here, so it's pretty straightforward. Ah, that's a good crimp. Very nice. After you do a few of these, you really get a sense for what's a really, really good crimp. Yeah. Marvelous. Let's heat shrink these. It's easy to tell when your heat shrink is complete, because the shrink tube will go from translucent to almost transparent, meaning that the plastic has made a perfect bond with the insulation of the wire underneath. There we go. Let them cool just a bit, because they're pretty hot. All right then, and now simply to make the connections. The hooks are also nice because they kind of hold it in place while you're working. Just in case you're going to do this without having spent a little bit of time studying how it's done, green is ground, goes to green. White is neutral, goes to the chrome screws. Black is hot, it goes to the brass screws. But if you don't know that, do some more research before you start doing your own wiring. I always wind in the other screws just to keep them out of the way. All right, and the cover. And if you're fussy like me, the screw always has to end up vertical. All right then, so for now, this outlet will service my fridge and coffee center. Let's keep going. Well, I know I'm going to get some flack for this, but with a bunch of the outlets now wired up, all I need to do is bring power on to the terminal strips for the AC circuit. And because I don't have my big breaker panel, which will go on the door, I've just temporarily wired a bunch of breakers from this temporarily installed bus bar, that great word temporary, and I will feed the few circuits that I'm already going to use off of here, and then we'll branch these down with a 10 gauge feed wire to the shore power. All right, so this is going to be the temporary hot bus bar. So one side of each breaker will go onto here, and this first one is going to be for the Folksel. And Folksel is the first circuit. All right, Folksel, on, off, haha. All right, then we have 4 breakers for the 4 circuits I'm going to use straight off the bat, which is the Folksel, the aft cabin, the wheelhouse, and the hot water heater. That's right. I feel like a king. 4 circuits. Wow. All right then, so we have ground, neutral, and hot at the top. All we need now is a nice big fat wire to feed those 3 bus bars that goes out to shore power. Now this same wire will be actually the final wire that feeds this. So in fact, this won't be going to shore power. Eventually it'll go down to the inverter, the charge inverter, but for now, shore power. Okay, so I've run this 10-3 main power in out to the shore power. Now, in retrospect, I think I'll probably upgrade this to 8-3 just for a little more oomph, but it's certainly adequate for now. So let's try the first breaker. Any sparks? Woo, did you hear that? That was my computer starting up again. Okay, so let's start up the fridge. Excellent. And the hot water. And the wheelhouse. Fantastic! And I'm done with this mess. Yes, yes, yes. Next we have to deal with that mess. Okay, so let's venture into the chain locker. Always the most fun spot. Well, there's 100 feet of 5/16 galvanized chain that has some galvanizing left on it, and about 300 feet of 5/8, but it's braid, so it's not very useful. Okay, let me look around up here. This is what we're having to deal with now. That is the windlass for MV Jordy, which is a beast of a thing, which actually does work, or worked at least last time I used it. And the relays, as you can see, are, well, they're there. Let's see if they work. I've relocated the wires and dragged them out. They are woefully undersized. I haven't actually looked at the gauge, but I can tell they're just way too small. But I'm going to route them through, put new ends on them, and we'll see if we can get this windlass to work. These used to run through the bilge. I can't imagine why people run wires through the bilge. Horrible, horrible place. Of course, I am going to have to replace these with decent marine wire, because not only are these undersized, they're not tinned, but boy, I'm going to have some lovely jumper cables. Okay then, so the windlass is all connected up. Let's see what we have in the way of operation. I've taken the chain off the Gypsy so that nothing will move. Works on up. Oh dear. Doesn't work on down. Well, we'll just have to look into that, won't we? Okay. Never easy. Alright then. With a little cleaning up of terminals and wires and relays and stuff below, we now have a bi-directional windlass, such as it is. So let's put it all back together and see if we can operate it. Get this up on here. Want to lose the anchor. Oh, there we go. All right, let's go down. Fire up. Now I'm going to take you for a little tour here. I bought this anchor shortly after buying the boat, and it's a good size. I forget what it is. It's about a 42, I forget how much it weighs. But I also bought this fancy rocking hinged bow roller, which was to be just the best thing for self-deploying the anchor and keeping it from too much load on it at the end. But really, it was a pretty much terrible mistake, even though it was obscenely expensive, because the rollers are way too small and the chain just bounces over it terribly, and I'm not sure it's as solid as it should be. So I think a different anchor, a proper self-deploying anchor, and if I can find a nice big bronze bow roller, we'll see about that. But anyway, let's bring it up the rest of the way. There we go. Oh, you see a little flex in this? Yeah, the entire anchoring system does need a little attention. Got to be careful with it, but it's stout. Well, folks, I've discovered a bit of a snafu in relation to the upcoming sea trial. The fact that my slip is in stunningly poor position for low tide departures. This is actually about 6 inches higher than the water will be at the appointed time of 1 o'clock for a sea trial. I've just done a bit of a sounding, and it's only about 3 feet of water underneath where I have to get out. Don't worry, Geordie is not aground right now. It's just very light in the bow, having no batteries or fuel tanks or anything like that. Anyway, but we're going ahead. What I think I'm going to do is just move the boat around, hand bomb it around to another slip that's available that has plenty of water for the little Sunday tour. So excited. Well, hello and welcome to the Travels with Geordie Beer of the Week, live from MV Geordie's bridge deck on yet another glorious Victoria day. It was raining this morning. Okay, so straight to the beer. This is Hoynes Dark Matter. This is an absolute mainstay of the Victoria community, especially, to me anyway, the festival community. Go to a folk festival around here or any sort of festival, Hoynes seems to have it wrapped up, and Dark Matter is my go-to. This is a relatively straightforward dark beer, and I don't drink a lot of it, but I'm never disappointed. And you know what? I just felt like it today. So let's have a go for Hoynes Dark Matter. Oh, what an absolutely glorious day. Every day is just getting nicer than the one before. I'm really looking forward to tomorrow. We'll see if we have a fabulous day for our sea trial. Cheers. Nutty, a little bit warm, kind of, oh, it's a great beer actually. I don't know why I don't drink more of it. Okay, a few things to get through too. I want to thank last week's winner, congratulate, who is John Hunter. So John, get a hold of me if I don't get a hold of you, and we'll make sure you get your Travels with Geordie t-shirt. Wow, another new Patreon came on last week. Maximiliano Besso. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Thank you ever so much, and I'm very, very grateful. Cheers to you. Also on PayPal, two new supporters. Thank you so much to Joe Little and Natalie Jewell. Thank you to both of you. Cheers. And we got sorted out who sent along those 2 spools of 14-2 wire a couple of weeks ago. Better yet, he also sent along a beautiful new drill set and a really fantastic Starrett center punch. I think he got fed up with me with that snap one. I don't know if I can actually show you how this works. Basically, you push really hard and the spring will eventually let go, and I'm gonna punch a hole in my face if I'm not careful, and let go, and there you go. Punch a wicked hole in whatever it is you're doing. Anyway, these are fantastic. I used to have one. You can also hit it with a hammer, but I find it's easier just to put it and press it and go. Okay, all of that came from Patrick Hotra. Thanks ever so much, Patrick. Also, actually a couple of weeks ago, we didn't get a chance to thank William Botham for an SD card for the GoPro, the camera you're watching me on right now. This is so handy because I'm juggling cards all the time, especially when I shoot long days. I run out of memory, and in the middle of the day, it's really nice to have another card I can just throw right into it. So, thank you, William, for that. I have to admit, it's the middle of the day, and I gotta get back to work, but I wanted to shoot this while it was still nice. So we'll move on pretty quick. All you need now is a word of the week. And the word of the week this week will be interim. That's going to be my new word for temporary. Yeah, not going to use temporary anymore, interim. So the electrical panel you just saw me put those breakers on, those are interim
breakers. Intro. Sure.